Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening today to the Diet Diaries. I'm recording on Monday, June 22nd. This episode is going to air next Monday, June 29th. Guys, Ben is graduating from 8th grade this week, and he is leaving for camp on the same day. And by the time you listen to this, he will be there, and I'll have been through it all. And we knew the timing of this, like at the end of last summer. He's actually missing the last day of school because our school finishes so late this year and camp actually starts on Tuesday. So he's missing the first 2 days of camp, which really sucks. So we knew he was going to have to fly up after graduation that night. And at the time it was like, oh, fine, like whatever, not a big deal. But now it's here and I'm like, oh, this is like a lot at once. And I am a very emotional, like sentimental person. So, it's not even so much finishing of 8th grade itself. It's more like the next big milestone is high school graduation. And we're moving on to a new school and a new routine, and things are going to be very, very different than they've been for the last 3 years. And that's, obviously going to high school is a huge change. And it's just also wild to think that I have a kid who's going to high school. Crazy. So let's get into it today. Let's keep going with our GLP-1 convo. This is going to be the third episode now that I've done recently. And I have to be honest with you guys, the downloads on the two that I did recently are some of the highest downloads within the first week of publishing that I've had in a really long time. So like older episodes have a lot more downloads than these have, but within the first week of these episodes being live, having like 90 or 100 downloads, which is a lot. So you guys clearly want to hear about this. This is, and it makes sense. Like, why wouldn't you want to hear about this? Like I've been saying, whether you're on one, off one, thinking about one, or aren't even considering one, they are impacting you because you know people on them, you see people on them, you're hearing about it everywhere, and these are cultural shapeshifters. I said that in an email a couple weeks ago. So whether you like it or not, you are being impacted by these meds. And so I think that's why these conversations are super important. And that's why I'm actually really excited, for lack of a better term, to talk about what I'm going to talk about today, which is kind of like a really like nuanced niche part of GLP-1s. And it's something that I have heard directly from a couple of clients, from some friends and family. And there's kind of two sides to this coin. But this idea about what GLP-1s do, and I'm just going to start saying Zepbound because most people are on Zepbound. This includes Ozempic, this includes Wegovy, this includes Mounjaro, because remember, Mounjaro and Zepbound are the same. Ozempic and Wegovy are the same. They're just different names. But the majority of people now are on Zepbound. So I'm just going to start saying Zepbound instead of GLP-1s. And if you're on a compounded version, you know my thoughts on that. But again, this all applies to you too. And I think that this in some ways applies more to people who had less weight to lose to begin with. But essentially using Zepbound and relying on the guardrails of the drugs too much and not enough on your own skills, right? And this is where I see the huge gap for people who are on these meds completely alone, under the supervision of no one. And I even mean like, yeah, you might be getting it from like your GP, but they're not supervising you. And where I see a huge, huge opportunity for GLP-1s, Zepbound, and coaching to coexist together and work side by side really, really well to get you like the most amazing results. Because when you rely too much on the meds to do the work for you, you're gonna you are gonna slowly watch yourself slide back into old habits. And I've seen this happen. I've had clients share this with me firsthand. Here's what I mean by that, right? So I think at first for a lot of people when they go on the meds, and this is not the case for everyone, but people feel like a difference with the food noise and with their appetite like right away. And for some people it feels so revolutionary that it's like, oh my God, this is a game changer. This is like literally changing my life. I don't really have to like think about anything anymore. I'm just eating less, right? I'm just eating less. I'm not like craving sweets as much anymore. And that feels great. And that's awesome. But I think what happens is that it gives people permission to eat foods that maybe they had previously been afraid to eat before. Here's what I mean. If you are someone who is already in a smaller body, and so let's say you're on one of these meds to lose 10, 15 pounds. And you have kind of kept yourself in check by not eating foods that you kind of maybe really would have wanted to eat. Like, let's say you love pasta, or you love bread, or you love sandwiches or burgers or pizza, but you were like, oh my God, I never order pasta. I never eat pizza. I never eat burgers, like very, very rarely, because if I do, I'm going to gain weight. I'm going to go off the rails. I just know I'm someone who just can't eat those foods, right? These are very real lived experiences. And then you go on Zepbound, and suddenly the Zepbound does all this work for you of regulating your intake. So suddenly it's now like, oh, I can actually eat pasta and eat like a quote unquote normal amount, and not only not gain weight, I can lose weight. Holy shit, it's like a fucking miracle, right? And logically and emotionally, this all makes sense. I completely get that. But I think what happens then is over time, you get used to leaning into the Zepbound to control your appetite, and in some ways to kind of control what you eat, that you stop thinking as much about the choices that you're making. And are you now eating in a way that's actually maybe still less food overall? So you're in a caloric deficit and you're losing weight, but is it actually healthier? Is it actually better for you? Is it actually making you feel good? How's it impacting your energy, your mood, your strength training, your activity levels? How is it supporting all of that? Right? So again, like, here's what I mean. Like, if you've been terrified to eat pasta before you went on Zepbound, and now you can eat a normal size amount of pasta and lose weight, you're like, oh my God, I can just have pasta like whenever I want. And I've seen this happen, right? With clients, with friends, anecdotally. And you start eating less protein, and you start eating more carbs, and you start eating, in some ways, like, not that you're eating more sweets, but you're letting yourself have that stuff more often, because the Zepbound can control your intake of it. So whereas before you might say, oh my God, I never let myself have cake or ice cream or whatever, like once in a while, like twice a month. But now it's like, oh, I could actually have cake or ice cream like a couple times a week or whatever it is. But you let yourself start having these things more often. And the sweets example is maybe like not the best example. I think it actually really applies more to like kind of like your day-to-day food. But it is not a secret how important protein is in general. But I'm going to even say especially on a GLP-1, because you are losing weight, and because no matter what you do, when you lose weight, you lose fat and you lose muscle, right? And GLP-1s do not make you lose a disproportionate amount of muscle. That's bullshit. They don't like waste your muscle away. That shit is not true. But if you are under eating protein, that is going to impact things. And if you are not strength training, that is going to impact things. And the strength training may actually play a bigger role than the protein, but they really do go hand in hand. So if you now have the freedom and flexibility to eat more foods, which is wonderful, right? That feels so good because of the Zepbound, because it's giving you the guardrails to not overeat and to eat it in a way that feels good. But as a result, you are now maybe eating less nutritious foods because you are able to fit in more of the stuff that you couldn't before. What are the implications of that? I think this is something that for some of you, you might be like, this has not been my experience. That's fine. But I know there are a lot of women out there who are having this experience, and it's just not being talked about. And that's why I'm talking about it. Because I think people think like, oh, it controls my food noise. It makes it easier for me to make good choices. Now, instead of eating like a giant bowl of pasta, I can eat more vegetables and have some pasta, right? What I'm talking about today specifically is coming from the angle and from the perspective of women who have had disordered eating, who have constantly been dieting, very all or nothing, very restrictive around foods. I am not talking about women who have obesity. I am talking about women who have been nonstop regulating and controlling what they've been eating their entire lives, and therefore have never had the freedom or the flexibility to actually be able to eat what they wanted, because they always felt like if they did eat what they wanted, they would just gain a shit ton of weight. So this is your starting point. The person that I'm talking about here, their starting point is very different than someone who has obesity and who was probably eating large quantities of pizza and pasta and all these things and wasn't or couldn't regulate it, right? And what's so interesting is these meds were meant for the latter group, but they are being actively used by the former, right? For better or worse, this is not even a conversation around should it not be happening? It's happening, right? This is the jig is up. This is the world we're living in. It is happening. People who want to lose 10, 15 pounds are using these meds constantly, all the time, every day. It's happening. And so because of that, I think it's really important that we have these conversations. So if you are one of those people, you know what to look out for, right? So if you are someone who is on a GLP-1 on Zepbound, I keep still saying it, even though I'm trying not to, because you want to lose 10 or 15 pounds, you need to be aware of what has been your history with dieting, with food. How do you think about food? What is your relationship with food? Are you someone who's been terrified to eat pasta and bread your whole life or is terrified to have sweets around, who lives their life saying, I can't have that in a house, who lives their life like alternating between being really good and being really clean and saying, fuck it, I don't give a shit, I don't care, I can't do this, or having a cheat day once a week or once a month and having it turn into a cheat weekend, all these different extreme behaviors that we ping pong between. If you are someone who's now on a GLP-1 who has lived that life, I encourage you to get curious around how you are now thinking about food and how you are now eating. Do you find yourself now eating some of those foods you had been afraid to eat more often? And what are the implications of that? What are the outcomes of that? And if so, do you find that you are eating things that you want to be eating in terms of like nutrition, maybe less often because there's less space, because you're like, oh, I can have pizza now. It feels so much easier. I can order a burger and fries and I can eat half the burger and half the fries and it's no big deal now. Whereas before I would try to eat half and the food would just talk to me. And somehow before I knew it, I would just end up finishing the fries and not even realize how it happened and then feel so disgusting and gross for the rest of the day. But now I can eat half and I can actually feel good. Again, which I'm not saying that's bad. That is a good thing. But two things can be true. And do you find yourself making choices around food what are the implications of them in terms of your health and well-being, right? How much protein are you getting? How many fruits and vegetables are you getting? How has it impacted your appetite? This kind of goes back to what I talked about, what'll be 2 weeks ago, which is your appetite been regulated or has it been suppressed? And is your appetite so low that you're actually finding it hard to eat what you need to eat to feel good? People talk about having fatigue on GLP-1s. Well, yes, could it be a side effect of the drug itself? Yes, but it could also be a side of the fact that you're just eating way less food and when your body's not getting enough energy, you feel tired. And so I think for people who have had disordered eating and who are on GLP-1s, I think this is a really important conversation to be having. How are you relying on those meds to control your food intake? And how is it maybe indirectly impacting your food choices? And are you getting what you need to be healthy, right? So if you are on these meds and your argument is that, oh, it's healthier, I want to lose weight, I'm going to be healthier at this weight, but then the food choices you're making are actually not making you healthier because A, you're not eating enough, or you're not being thoughtful about your choices, or you're like, oh my God, now I can have pasta 4 times a week. And so I'm having pasta 4 times a week. And so I'm not having like the protein or the veggies or whatever. What are the implications of that? Right. And again, if you are someone who was trying to lose 10 or 15 pounds and you're not eating enough protein and you're not lifting heavy, you are probably losing more muscle. So then are you healthier than you were before? Deliberate pause there to leave some space to think that through. Again, it comes back to this idea of like leaning into the freedom that Zepbound is giving people to eat what you want without a fear of gaining weight. And there is something, again, freeing and wonderful and amazing about that. But there is also a flip side to that I think people are not talking about and people are not really aware of. And that is I have the freedom now, again, to eat all these things, and I'm not going to gain weight for them, but am I now being less thoughtful about the food that I'm putting into my body, and what are the implications of that? Like, what does that mean? And am I not using my skills enough, right? So this is where this overlaps with coaching so much, right? Because solely relying on a medication to do the work for you, the medication can't make choices for you. It can lower your food noise, and it can decrease your appetite. It can regulate it, it can suppress it. This goes back to the first episode I did 3 weeks ago. It cannot make food choices for you. Only you, a conscious human being, can choose what food actually gets put into your mouth, and noticing how much you're enjoying it, and noticing how much you're choosing to eat, and when you stop. So for some people, again, people who have obesity, who have a really dysregulated appetite, who are overeating, who are eating large quantities of very calorie dense foods, and that's what's creating their weight gain, this is going to create space for them to make more nutritious choices and be more thoughtful. Whereas for people who, again, don't have a dysregulated appetite, maybe have a lot of food noise, but don't have a dysregulated appetite, are not eating crazy large portions of food, do not have a lot of excess body fat to lose, they are often coming at this from a very different starting point. And so what are the meds doing to them, and how is that impacting their food choices? Again, right? Is it creating space for them to make quote unquote better food choices? This person has already been trying and already quote unquote been making those better food choices, right? And it sounds like I'm applying judgment to these things. I'm not. I'm using these terms for clarity because it gets the point across, right? Someone who has been dieting their whole life and restricting their food has already been trying to eat a shit ton of vegetables and eat a lot of protein and like control their carbs and all of that. That's what they've been obsessed with, and have gotten into this place where they're just miserable, right? This was kind of me. I'm speaking from my own lived experience with that. And I have not been on a GLP-1. I think I assume everyone knows that. But just to be clear. But then someone who's been in that place, who then now has what they feel like the freedom to eat those foods, with suddenly, for the first time in their lives, I can eat this without gaining weight. Again, what does that mean? So yes, in some ways, of course, it feels wonderful to be able to incorporate more of that. But on the flip side, are you now not including and not making choices and not being thoughtful about everything else that you do still need to be eating, right? There needs to be both. There needs to be room for all of the amazing, wonderful, calorie dense, delicious stuff that has very little nutrition. And we still need all of the nutritious, nutrient dense fruits and veggies and fiber and protein and all of that. And how do these things coexist, and how are you making those choices? That's where the skills come in around, what do I need to feel full? What do I need to enjoy this? What nutrition do I need? How's this impacting my energy level? How's this impacting my mood? How is this impacting how I'm showing up at the gym? And knowing how to pay attention to and regulate all of that. And notice when I'm relying on the meds to control what I'm eating, and when I am being thoughtful and intentional about the choices I'm making. Because to constantly I can just eat pizza and pasta whenever I want because I know I'm not going to overeat it. That's not what these meds are designed to do. And it's so interesting because Katie Sturino, who's the founder of Mega Babe, who was openly talking about her experience on Zepbound. She talks about it in her Substack. She wrote a Substack a couple of weeks ago, and I saved it. And she did struggle with obesity her whole life, and a lot of food noise and disordered eating, but also was eating, larger quantities of foods, like really could not regulate her intake at all. And she talked about in this email that she has found herself kind of gamifying her experience on GLP-1s over the course of the week, right? So basically you take a shot on whatever day, and then the effects start to wear off as you get towards the end of the week. A lot of people talk about this. The first few days, their appetite's really regulated. The food noise is like really shut off. This is a lot of times when they feel the strongest side effects. And as they get closer to the next shot day, a lot of that stuff starts to wear off, and the appetite and the food noise starts to come back. And what she said she was doing is she was using those first few days to She wasn't really even interested in food. She was like really not eating a lot. But then as her appetite started to ramp up on the back half of the week, it'd be like, oh, well, now's going to be my chance. I'm going to have pizza. I'm going to have pasta. I'm going to have ice cream. I know the GLP-1 is still going to kind of control it. And I know that when I get my shot in a couple of days, I'm not going to want to eat anything. So it's all going to kind of offset and balance itself out. Kind of like how if you did Weight Watchers, we would like, you could, part of the Weight Watchers system was banking points, right? I remember I got like 29 or 30 points a day, but if you only use, let's say 25 points in a day, you could take those 5 points and save them up. I mean, oh my God, I can't even like talk about that out loud without feeling so disgusted at the way that fueled so much disordered eating. And that's why her brain is going there, right? Because it's like, oh, if I know I'm going to inherently automatically eat less Monday through Thursday, then I can kind of do whatever the fuck I want Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it's all going to balance out. That's not what these meds are meant for. And that's basically what she's saying. She's like, I realize that this is my disordered eating rearing its head, and that's not what this is meant for. Like she was basically said, she's like, I'm going into fuck it mode. She said, I've noticed old habits creeping in, late night cake slice deliveries, frequent after dinner drives for ice cream, pastries, multiple pastries ordered with coffee. Now, these things are not inherently bad, but they are indicative of a mental state I shift into called fuck it mode. She would say, my justification for ignoring and just existing in fuck it mode is that I have learned to game the system. The drug will block my big food cues for a few days, and then I can surf around in fuck it mode for a few days, and then it's shot time again, right? That's not what this is meant to be. This is meant to be developing consistent and sustainable skills and ways to eat 7 days a week, not 3 days a week. And I so appreciated her talking about this openly because there are a lot of people out there who are experiencing the same thing and no one is talking about it. Just like no one is talking about the flip side of people who are in smaller bodies using these meds and what are the implications for them. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. If you are feeling called out, I'm not trying to call you out. I'm hoping that this will make you curious, will make you start reflecting and asking yourself questions. These are the types of skills that I work on in coaching with clients. I coach several clients currently and have coached many clients in the past on Zepbound, Ozempic, and on compounds. So it is not an either or, it is a both and. So again, I hope this got you thinking. If you are not on a GLP-1, if you're considering one, I hope this got you thinking. And if you are someone who's like, I don't even give a fuck about GLP-1s, again, I hope this got you thinking. Maybe just about some of your own thoughts and opinions around the meds and about the way you might think about food or the way you might gamify different systems and ways of controlling and regulating your eating. So thanks for listening. I will be back next week. See you soon.